For me, that felt a little strong compared to everything else around it, and it's really about context, right? There are no rules for this stuff.
Hey everybody, this is my buddy Christian Lee.
What's up?
He's an amazing keyboardist and pianist, and today we're here to teach you
how to get good at music.
All right, there we go. Misty.
Old reliable.
Classic.
Nice embellishment in the melody there.
Yeah. 7 sharp 9.
Nice.
You could hear him think in that moment.
Which I don't actually mind that, you know.
It is nice, actually. Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, if someone's really trying to hear something.
Nice.
Nice movement of that inner voice. Some nice harmony going on.
Yeah, beautiful, man. Love your touch.
Absolute.
You got the chords. The chords are there for sure.
Absolute.
You know about chords, don't you?
Trying.
This guy knows chords.
Working on it. We're working on it. I mean, I think there's a ton of amazing harmony happening, and it's clear that you've spent a lot of time thinking about the harmonic structure of this piece and sort of some ways to bring some additional color. Your use of tension was really beautiful and was really, you know, not a lot of people know how to use some of those for upper extensions in ways that feel really idiomatic, and I felt like you really did.
There were some of those that I was like, wow, this feels right. This feels truthful, and that's hard to get to that point.
Absolutely. And I would say that one thing to explore is, you know, like a lot of the harmony you're checking out and a lot of the stuff that's already in there really comes from this idea of voice leading and of counterpoint, right? I mean, harmony is the simultaneous occurrence of many melodies, and a lot of those inner voices, a lot of those tensions have melodic origins, right? And a good exercise that the bass player Ben Street showed me, which I think actually I've heard people say that Fred Hirsch teaches this as well.
Oh.
Like you can play the melody and you can play like a couple voices in your left hand, but try not to skip. So if, for example, I'm starting here, I'm going from chord to chord, and even that bass note, I'm trying not to. And if you can, you know, find some of these spaces in the middle, it's hard to play and talk at the same time.
Yeah. Every line is like a melody unto itself, including the bass voice, which you normally are treating as this thing which is jumping up and down.
Right.
And as a bass player, I apprate that your pinky is thinking about me
I
now.
got your back. And then, yeah, when you have the whole texture going on, then you can remember some of those places, some of those like little spaces you found in the harmony. You know, and I'm not going by like any kind of harmonization technique. I'm just thinking really about the voices and some of those places that I discovered through just exploring just one or two voices at a time and exploring them in a way that felt melodic.
Where every line wants to go somewhere within the key. There is a certain melody within the key that you just
Absolutely.
each one of your fingers is going. That's cool, man.
It gives you a lot more agency in how you play harmony too.
Classic.
I feel like this is like every bass player's gauntlet to walk.
You gotta do it, man. You're not a bass player unless... I'm totally kidding.
He's doing a good job though.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not easy to do. I mean, I can't do it.
Chaco played it once, and so every bass player must do it again.
I understand. Nice. Alright.
Killing. Sorry for talking over your bass solo, but you gotta get used to it, man. It comes with the territory.
Nice.
Dude, amazing. Loved the fact that you're tackling this. This is obviously a very technically demanding piece of music.
Oh, yeah.
I think, you know, the big thing is to work on articulation, because it sounds like you're just playing every note like very da 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 da. And, you can really make this come alive a lot more, I feel like, if you're not thinking of every note as just like a note that you need to play in this order, like a MIDI da-da-da-da-da-da.
Right, or like as an etude.
Actually, that's something to bring up. Bass players treat this as an etude.
Interesting.
Not as a piece of music, not as part of a lived tradition.
Right, which is interesting. I think a lot of Charlie Parker's heads tend to be treated that way. The heads themselves were incredibly melodic and also incredibly rhythmic and super funky and just like seamlessly transitioned into their solo vocabulary. All these heads are, I think, really amazing examples of like the relationship between melody and solo.
And you can really see that, of course. There's the Charlie Parker Omni book where it's all these transcriptions of Charlie Parker solos. It's a great study tool to see that, oh, this vocabulary looks the same and sounds the same. It seems like it's a natural extension of the melody.
And arguably also a way for Charlie Parker to explore vocabulary through the act of composing.
So one thing I think would be great in this case is just to think about accenting notes which are not every beat.
Yes.
That would be very, very helpful.
Absolutely. And like there's all these like rhythms hidden inside that melody, right? Like
yeah.
It's not just like, exactly. It's not just like, right, and then, you can really play with like the accenting, and again, this is actually more of a downbeaty head than a lot of his heads, actually.
It is, yeah.
Now that I play it, I made that bold claim, but
maybe it's, maybe it is designed to be an etude, I guess.
But arguably, like if you hear someone like Lester Young play, who was a huge influence on Charlie Parker, Lester Young was like really respected the downbeat in that James Brown kind of,
And there's something like very bass playery, I guess, about the downbeat. It grounds you in a way. Obviously, the accent in jazz is on 2 and 4, and when you're clapping, the accent's there. But there is something about feeling the 1 and 3.
Yeah, that's sort of like a chicken or the egg question for me, because like I've had success really working on both, and it's an interesting one because I feel like 2 and 4 are the most embodied in a lot of ways by musicians themselves. But if you were dancing to it, like 1 and 3 would be super, super embodied, at least from the ground up. All right, there's no 2 and 4 without 1 and 3.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting, it's like an interesting debate, and I tend to find that a lot of times when people think 2 and 4 too heavily, that their beat starts to feel a little lopsided.
It also feels more tense because 2 and 4, because they're accented and because that's the action beats, like versus you can like feel that and like let it simmer a little bit more. Of course, there's this aspect of it where people don't want to feel it on 1 and 3. Because that's not what you do.
I mean,
that's
sure.
Not,
it's square, for example, to clap on like 1 and 3 when you're listening, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I get that, but that's because this upper body isn't the embodiment of 1 and 3. It's all down here.
Yeah, could you imagine dancing on 2 and 4? That feels very strange.
I mean, at least without having a strong grounding on 1 and 3, it feels very...
Yeah, because this is a reaction to 2 and 3, and this is accent, this is the action, but you have to ground yourself, and I feel like so many people forget to ground themselves.
Yeah.
Thankfully, bass players, we're there to help you guys out. We're there to help you guys out on 1 and 3. But
2 other things I think I would just mention. One is that like a lot of the accenting in a head like this, similar like with Bach actually, is we get that from like the placement of high or low notes, for example, or the ends and beginnings of phrases. And so those are always points to check out. But you can also look within a phrase for any like topological sort of cues,
you
to
see
like
the little thing and then you're like, aha, that's
grab that. That's gonna
yeah.
make that melody come alive. And you don't want to play this sounding like an exercise. You want to play this like a living, breathing melody. If you slow down Charlie Parker to like half speed, it's so amazing because he sounds funky as hell. I would encourage you to do that and slow it down and just like listen to how funky those guys are, how in the pocket they are, and just how expressive they are with all of this stuff, with rhythm within the line, with their tone, with the articulation, etc.
Killing. Yeah, great job, man. Good tone.
Great tone.
That guitar backing is nice.
Yep. Really clear ideas.
That was awesome. Yeah, I love your tone. Like very, very sparse, minimalist kind of groove you got going.
Actually, this is something I don't hear a lot of soloists do, but I really love that you did it, which is that you played really clear ideas. And you played an idea, you let it sit, you heard the next idea, which often was really, really just like well tied into the previous idea. So as a result, your solo didn't just feel like noodling, it felt purposeful.
I think my big maybe critique of this is figuring out ways of playing to your harmonized version of yourself. Like you layered in those sax harmonies, and sometimes your solo tone was kind of getting lost in the mix there a little bit.
You clearly had a sense of like call and response in the beginning of your solo. When the saxes come in, it's an actual part that you're playing against. Just don't forget about that, you know, call and response aspect of the music, because again, that is taking up the same space as your solo, and so therefore if you're playing and then you're playing on top of these other sax parts, it's sort of all colliding in these ways where it could be more of a conversation.
Yeah, and it's your own sound that you're playing against. You're fighting against literally yourself, and there's some kind of philosophical thing there, like man's fight against himself, I guess. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
But awesome. That was an awesome submission. Thank you so much.
Yeah, super in the pocket too.
Oh,
right off the bat.
It's all about the ands, as Barry Harris would say. It's all about the ands.
I have heard people play this, but I don't know really anything about it. But it's a cool sound.
Yeah. Harmonics, some kind of cool. Yeah, hang drum is, I feel like, an instrument kind of like the harp, where it's difficult to make it sound bad.
Yeah, it's true.
It just sounds good.
Yeah. But I think there's also wisdom in that, because it's an instrument with these inherent limitations, right? Here's an instrument with 88 keys and, you know, all these chromatic notes. And like, sometimes people get carried away or don't know like what avenue or what system within this giant system to focus on. And here's a pre-built one, and you can just make music.
It really focuses you on things like rhythm and texture and timbre, and it's a different way of approaching music in general, rather than just how do I get the harmony going right. If I was to critique this, it might be that just getting more in the pocket with the drums, and I've never really heard this kind of thing before where it's hang drum and drum groove.
Yeah, yeah.
This is kind of unique, I think, and I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but acoustic guitar players and cajon players never seem to really lock to me.
Huh.
There's something about the timbres which like clash, or there's something in the high end which is difficult.
I've never noticed that. Yeah, I would agree. Just like, you know, finding a way to sort of like be in that pocket more with the groove if you can, especially since it's all 16th notes, if everything's sort of like flammy.
Because you're really having to lock with every single one of those hi-hats, and if they're not locked, then it's not locked.
So you're setting a difficult challenge for yourself here, but it's a worthy one.
Yeah, super cool. Yeah. Beautiful playing. I love the harmonics at the end.
Yeah, very cool.
Snare.
Very like Wayne Shorter chords.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. There's a wonky drum groove. Yeah. Was that minor major 7 or augmented situation?
I was listening more to the drums. I got paid attention more. I love that chord.
That's the Wayne Shorter chord right there. Odd bass note, but yeah, that was awesome. Super colorful harmony. The really wonky Dilla groove. There's some really interesting bass notes.
It's interesting when you have this kind of harmony that's sort of like half functional, but there's also some color chords in there.
It's very Wayne Shorter.
Yeah. Actually, there's one chord that we heard that was like, oh, that seems like something from like 80s Wayne Shorter, or like, you know,
even foam right there.
Yeah, or even some of the records in the 80s, like Phantom Navigator, like, you know, those records, they're amazing. You know, for me, again, we're getting into subjective territory here, but when you have a color chord, especially that like minor major 7 chord, you know, that was happening there, for me, that felt a little strong compared to everything else around it, and it's really about context, right? There are no rules for this stuff, right? It's about context, and for me, it sort of involves developing a real deep relationship with the sounds of all of these chords.
Is that really the chord that needed
Sure.
to happen?
Sure.
And maybe it is.
Maybe it is.
But when we're doing these how to get good at music things, a lot of it is just our own subjective reactions to it. And so you have to take everything with a grain of salt, but also understand that these reactions are coming from experience too.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I keep coming back to that one and thinking like, is that the right one? I don't know, maybe.
If in the narrative of your chord structure, if you think of it as a story, you know, if there had been things that sort of supported that or led up to that in a certain way, we could totally get away with stuff like that. You know, you can get away with all kinds of wild colors if you know how to frame them.
If this was the climax of the story, that's a very good chord for that.
Yeah.
If it's just part of the general fabric of the story, the background of the story, alongside the other chords, it's a little harder to hear that logic. This Dilla groove is cool, but there is this particular flam between the kick drum and the snare that is sometimes happening on the backbeat, where the kick drum is like really right up against the snare. And I noticed in your description you said 30-second note accents. Maybe it's a 30-second note next to the snare. I don't know, which is cool, but I'm not sure if this feels the way that you want it to. And I think a lot of people approach Dilla grooves from this perspective of like, oh, it's gotta be wonky, but no, it also has to feel good too.
Right. I think one of Dilla's great contributions to the music is that he gave the drum machine and an electronic instrument, he gave it breath and he gave it life. Right?
Yeah.
He's the mad scientist, you know.
How you do that is so interesting too. It's being very conscious of these sounds in a way that the computer isn't conscious of them.
Totally. And again, like, you know, you can arrive at these places from lots of different perspectives. Like if your way into this kind of feel is to like be like, okay, 30-second note divisions, cool.
Listen to it, try to dance to it, try and go like this to your own 30-second note flam grooves or whatever, and see if it just feels better. Maybe if it's not a 30-second note, maybe it's something else. Be very conscious of your own reactions to things, is kind of the point.
Yeah, and in the end, if it's like you started it out as it being a 30-second note and you found that it felt good somewhere in this nebulous area, but you got to there by thinking of a 30-second note thing first, great.
That's cool.
You know, but like, as you know, in the end, as long as it feels alive and it has, you know, life force, you're good.
Ah, yes. The midi chlorines.
If it has a gut microbiome.
Yeah, we're testing the pH levels of these grooves. Are they balanced? Yeah, okay. This is a funky looking EWI right here.
Like the hat?
Funky, Jacob Collier hat.
Yeah, Jacob Collier. I'm staying out of that one. Oh yeah.
That was amazing. Yeah, incredible vocabulary. You really are in the pocket. Love the EWI sounds that, I mean, you clearly are playing EWI like an EWI, which is nice.
And taking advantage of how expressive the instrument can be, you know, which is one of the hard parts about playing synth, like, I mean, as a keyboardist playing synth solos, it's just like, you can shred all day, but like, you are actually like playing around with some of the expressive, you know, modulatory capacity of that instrument. You know?
Yeah, where it is somewhere between a synthesizer and a woodwind instrument, and it really is its own thing that combines aspects of both of them.
Yeah. Again, this is getting to subjective territory because it's clearly like you have a like incredible grasp on what you're doing. It's great to play the vocabulary in a way that sounds really good and where everything fits together and has a purpose. And then I would say like go deeper and figure out what you can contribute to this, you know, incredible tradition of music that's so old, you know, and storied.
You know the tradition, you know this vocabulary of this kind of like smooth jazz situation, and my friend Zach Zinger is great at this kind of thing, but there's also this desire to contribute. Like, what else can you build from this vocabulary so you're not just saying the same thing over and over? I certainly say the same thing over and over. I have so many cliches. There's so many cliches, and I think cliches are cliches for good reason. They're a part of the vocabulary, but at the same time, how do you go deeper? How do you go beyond that? That's a hard thing to answer, honestly.
Yeah, it's even hard to talk about. You know, it's like, you know, I like to think that I can tell when someone's really searching and really trying to find meaning in the things that they're playing instead of just playing them. But who am I to say? You know?
Yeah, that's true.
You know.
But this was great.
Yeah,
This
it was very
awesome.
felt. Plethora of sweaters.
I wonder when this was filmed.
July. They did a good job orchestrating everything, though, you know. It's hard to... All right. I do too. Ooh. It's a cool line. And I like the... Not such a Merry Christmas.
No.
I was following the pack, all swallowed in their coats, with scarves of red tied round their throats to keep their little heads from falling in the snow. And I turned round and there you go.
You really hear the year 2022 here.
Yeah. Yeah. Somehow, like, yeah. I feel like if Olivier Messiaen listened to this, he's like, oh, I'm popular now.
It's like, oh, dang, where are my royalties at? Sweet. Oh my God, there's so much stuff that was happening.
Yeah.
That was really, really well done. The Tigran Hamasyan gent breakdown with the... I'm a sucker for a looped vocal.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, absolutely, yeah.
It's just, it makes everything...
The Uncanny Valley kind of thing.
Ah,
Yeah.
it's so good.
It's really
I love
cool.
it. Of course, like the Jacob Collier-esque stacked a cappella vocals. Gotta have those. A lot of stuff going on with this one. I don't know the original, but I'm assuming there's not as many notes in the original.
Like Adam said, like it's, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on, and that can sometimes be, you know, difficult to control or to make it sort of fit together as a narrative. But I feel like he actually did it really well.
Like as a narrative is a
Yeah.
good way of saying it. I feel like there is a story being told, which is the kind of really the main metric whenever I'm confronted with like
Yes.
a lot of things, is the story
Yes.
being told. And I felt that. You can really hear your influences here. Like this feels like, okay, we're doing this thing.
Yes.
We're now doing this thing.
Yes.
We're now doing this thing.
Yes.
Which is, I mean, these are all Berklee students, and like how else are you supposed to learn except by just doing the
Yeah.
things that you're enjoying?
Yeah.
And doing them very, very well. So definitely don't want to knock that at all.
Nope.
But it is going to be very interesting to hear what all of these people are doing 10 years from now.
Yeah, yeah.
Because hopefully they've taken these influences, these very clear influences, and then exploded them out into something
Absolutely. Yeah.
different.
Yeah, an old teacher of mine called it like the flailing talented musician syndrome, where it's just like you have all these things you can do and all these things you're exposed to, and the people around you are always telling you to check stuff out, and you're working on like a million things at the same time, and you want it all to come out. And that is like a very like young music student, specifically a music student thing. I think one of the things that Adam and I were talking about earlier is like you want to maybe hide your seams a little bit, or you want to at least like get to the point where all this music that you love and have a special relationship with comes out of the crucible, you know, as something that is uniquely yours and not necessarily just a Frankenstein of a bunch of different things, which I know is an aesthetic and can be a really cool one.
You want to burn everything down. You want to melt everything down and then reform it, rather than just hack it together. Not that that's what you're doing at all.
Yeah.
But there is a very particular order that I feel like everybody eventually goes through, where you take all of your influences and you let them simmer for a while.
Yeah.
You kind of have to let them simmer for a while. And when you're music school is not a good place to let things simmer. It's kind of the opposite.
Berklee.
Yeah. It's not. It's designed for a different purpose.
Yes.
And it's a kind of an important pedagogical question, like how do you get people to simmer over 4 years? And there's no real way.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and we were talking about this earlier too.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like maybe in a bygone era, or maybe still today, like you would form a band when you were young, and you would find yourselves through that channel, right?
Yeah.
Or you would form a band because you had something you wanted to say, you know. But with music students, sometimes it's the opposite. Like you go off to music school expecting to be molded into your mature self. But what music school I find often does, and I see this with a lot of my students at Berklee, is that music school often confuses people.
Yeah.
You know, like they might have had something really amazing and really awesome, you know, before they went to school, and then they get so confused at school that they're like, wait, what am I even doing? Like, because like all these things gain currency when you're at music school, right? You know, like, you know, like certain types of techniques or certain types of harmony or certain, you know, whatever it is, whatever's in vogue at school.
Yeah, and it makes it feel like you should be doing that because not necessarily peer pressure, but you want to play with the other musicians, and the other musicians are doing this thing. There is a bit of a Berklee bubble that I remembered from when I was back at Berklee, where everybody's checking out the same stuff, everybody's doing the same thing, and it's very good. But it does have the like tendency to coalesce around the Berklee sound. When you go out there and you're done, it's like, okay, now what? Oh God, what am I doing? And it's just something to be aware of when you're in school, to like not be afraid to let it simmer, let things simmer afterwards. Because again, 10 years from now, this is gonna be.
It's gonna be killer. I mean, it is. Killer.
I mean, it is good, but it's gonna be something crazy different, which is cool. Yeah,
absolutely. Music school is designed to teach you like really ferocious technique and like tons of knowledge about musical theory and things like that. Not necessarily the most important things. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, well, thanks guys so much for submitting. I want to say this though. This is very inspiring. Like checking this out, I'm like, I see what you did there. I see what you did. That's good. Because everybody's playing with like passion. Everybody's believing in what they're doing. That's another thing. It's like it's not just academic. Like this, people are very excited to play this, which is I think important here. And you can feel that too.
Being a professional musician's hard. Like, I think it's just also, regardless of all this stuff we're talking about, as long as you're having fun, you're doing something right.
Hey, all right. So Christian Lee, go check him out. Where can we check you out?
So yeah, I play with Sungazer, with Adam and Sean's project. I play with Shub Saran. I play with a really great guitarist named Mike Bono, who just is about to release a new record. But I do put stuff out intermittently on the interwebs, which I'll probably, you know, promote through Instagram or something, because that's the only form of social media I'm on. So thanks for having me.
Until next time, bass.